Don't look at it. You don't want to escalate the situation. So
are you checking your emails, or looking at other things while you're doing it, or are you showing through your physical bodily presence, I'm here, let's discuss this, let's talk this through, and let's find a good resolution.
Welcome to Get Your House in Order, where the Medici brothers, investors and entrepreneurs, Chris Auditore and Dr. Philip Zimmermann, discuss timeless principles of success, significance, and legacy. A podcast for business owners who want to design a beautiful life and a beautiful business. Sponsored by the one and only exclusive Medici community.
welcome back to Get Your House in Order. And sometimes to get your house in order, you need to negotiate. You need to negotiate your way to order, Chris. So the topic is hostage negotiation secrets. Reading the room, winning the deal. that is the small task.
This is if ChatGPT helps you put up the title.
In half an you gave in the title. So in half an hour, basically, you're gonna get all the hostage negotiation secrets, and you're gonna know how to read a room, and you know how to win a deal. So, Chris, let's get started.
2013, I was in the DRC, in the Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, with a team from Germany of about 20 volunteers. And the reason we were there is we wanted to help a school that our grandfather had planted 40 years ago to, educate kids there in the city of Goma, northeastern part of Africa. And for a week, we worked in the school. We built some benches, we painted some walls, and we did some teachings and workshops there for the kids. Hundreds and hundreds of kids in school. It's a very cool school and project. And lots of African stories. We slept, kind of on mattresses there. We washed ourselves out of buckets. I mean, this was the African experience, as you can imagine. After a week of doing labor work, which I call labor work, because it's not child labor, but it felt like child labor, because I don't know how to do this stuff. I'm not used to doing this kind of stuff, but it was so much fun. On Saturday, the local people, they wanted to take us actually to a refugee camp in a little bit outside the city. Now, you have to know that Goma was flooded during the genocide in Rwanda with refugees that basically took over the whole city when hell broke loose in Rwanda. Goma is a bordering city, and so there are actually lots of refugees, and still some people have stayed in these refugees places. Number one. Number two, they have rebels in the north of the DRC. It's actually a very dangerous area because they always fight over the diamonds and the mines there. And so there's a refugee camp which they wanted, the local people, they wanted to show us that on a Saturday afternoon. It's like a field trip, okay? So we get on a bus, we go to a refugee camp, and I was the leader of this little group here, and it's like we go there and we walk through a very, very primitive camp. And I have no idea how this happened, but people started coming to us. We were the only white people in this camp. Our group was all white Germans, Europeans, and all of a sudden we were surrounded by lots of people, and something changed in the atmosphere because there were some characters out of this refugee camp that were hostile. And our Saturday afternoon mood kind of went from up here to down. It got very dangerous. In fact, within a few moments, there was some shouting, there was some accusations, there was some anger, and my heart kind of dropped into my pants. I don't know if you say this in English, but my heart.
Good German saying.
Is that a good German saying? My heart dropped into my pants.
Mein Herz ist in die Hose gerutscht.
Mein Herz ist in die Hose gerutscht. And all of a sudden, we and then our local host got very nervous. they got very, very nervous, and we had they surrounded us, and we couldn't move. Now, kind of the idea obviously was to let's get on the bus and let's leave here. But all of a sudden, some guys stood in front of the bus. They encircled us, and let me just say, the hostage situation was also that we had probably half the team were women, and now most of the camp, in fact, all the people that I saw around me were just men, and we had about 10 women, and these were young women, let's say between, I don't know, 25 and 35 years old or 40 years old. And Goma, I think I only read this afterwards. The city of Goma is actually the capital of rape in the world. There are more women being raped in this city than any other city in the world. At least back then. I don't know what the statistics are now. It's a very violent place. And so you kind of, I don't know if you've ever had these kind of horror scenarios kind of come up in a situation, but I could just see that this is going to turn into the worst nightmare that I've experienced in my life. So we literally found ourselves in a hostage negotiation. Now, quite honestly, I don't remember how we got out with what words. So it did not end in any kind of fighting, but it ended in words kind of being thrown between us. And so I've literally been in a hostage situation, and and needed to fight my way out of it with words. Now, this is in a sense an extreme example, and perhaps some of you have also watched some of the movies. These hostage movies. In fact, I actually like them. I think people robbing a bank, taking hostages, and then there's the negotiation. There's the police outside. They come with the big tanks, and then someone needs to get
me the plane.
Yeah, someone needs to get on the phone and do the negotiation. I've got a number of these movies that I've watched over the years, which I've watched over and over because I just love this. To watch it, it's terrible to experience it, but it's actually it's fun to watch. It's an action movie, but here's and this is why I wanted to discuss this here in the topic in this episode, because we're in the business realm. We're not FBI agents here or training FBI people, but we're in the topic of negotiations every day as business owners. Every day we have to find ways on how to communicate with words, how to solve a problem, solve a situation. A client that is angry, a team that is enraged. There is some miscommunication. Something can turn sour. If I just look at my last month of handling some of the problems that I needed to step into, so most of the stuff, I don't have to get involved with our companies. We own more than 26 different companies around the world with different setups. We've got lots of people employed, and most of it gets handled. But the stuff that comes to me or to us is always the stuff where you need to be skilled on how to negotiate. And so I actually think it's a skill set. And if you watch some of these movies, these negotiators are being trained on how to negotiate. And I actually think there's some lessons for us to learn as business guys or women who are in our businesses and negotiating deals.
Well, the book that comes to mind is from actually a former FBI negotiator, Chris Voss. Never Split the Difference.
Yeah, I've read the book. It's a good book.
It's a really good book, and we can talk about some tactics here in a minute, or some things of how do you actually do that. I mean, just yesterday, and that's just how I knew I'm going to go into a negotiation. I know that they send the kind of their terms up front. I knew I'm not going to be happy with the terms. So I have kind of a cheat list of 25 different negotiation tactics that I read through every time I
You're nasty, my friend.
every time I prepare for a negotiation, and just kind of
You have a checklist for that.
Yes, I have a checklist.
This guy is crazy.
I have a checklist.
I don't have a checklist.
Yeah, that's why you always said, Philip, can you have that conversation?
That's right. That's why you have to do this kind of stuff.
Because they're actually ways, and most of it is stolen from Chris Voss because he's just great, and he puts it into the business terms as well, and we can talk about some ideas. But when you talked about your story, I remember, Chris, how in our office when we lived in Frankfurt, we had this office right at the Zeil, the main street, shopping street in Germany, and you had one corner office, I had the other corner office, and we had quite a few employees in the middle, and sometimes you would be shouting, I would be shouting at you because you sent an email or said something, and then we would start a fight, and brothers are brothers, so if we don't have the arguments, we start a real fight. And the employees just love that. But I remember one time you actually are getting over to me and said, Philip, can you? I have this meeting, and somebody wants to buy a place from us, but he wants to meet in the Frankfurter Hof, which is the best hotel in Frankfurt,
it's a 5-star hotel.
The 5-star plus the best hotel, Frankfurter Hof. So I'm like, yeah, sure, I'm going. This is not a problem. And on the way, I'm like, Chris, why are you asking? Normally, why am I joining you for this? And it's like, he's actually from the mafia. And all of a sudden my heart drops when I'm going like, it's not as bad, we're gonna negotiate with the mafia, but we're gonna do it in a nice surrounding. And
5-star hotel.
5-star hotel. What can go wrong? Well, we sit down, Chris. You because I don't cuss as much as you do. You can tell and continue the story.
Yeah, well, it was a property deal. It was we had signed a contract in front of the notary, and somehow the guys couldn't fulfill the contract. They missed the payment, and basically came up with all kinds of excuses why they couldn't pay. Now, because my contracts were solid, we had all the power to take them to court and strip these guys naked. Now, what I only later found out that they were actually involved with the mafia. Okay, which to do business with the mafia in Germany, and it's not it wasn't the Italian mafia. It was another country's mafia. Okay, so I don't want to blame any Italians here with that. But it was
just some major biking mafia that we know.
Yeah. So we had done a contract. I had the legal power to enforce this contract. The guys couldn't pay; they didn't pay, and basically we had the power.
And sent the cousin to negotiate.
Yeah, and then they basically asked for us to have a sit down. Which this is actually mafia terms. You do a sit down. You don't send an email. You do a sit down. And so
you bring your brother, and everybody brings the brother.
So this is when and this is why we walked over to this place, and we're sitting there, and the sentence that became famous is that the guys got really serious, and I mean they also it's like we don't really look like mafia people, but they did. Okay, so picture some gold chains and picture some tattoos on weird spaces and some nasty looking kind of features from their bodies, and the guy looks at us in the negotiation, and he says, "This is how we say in the underworld. Don't fuck the fucker." and we had to keep a straight face because they were in a sense threatening us with their words. Now sometimes I cuss because it's just
but this became a saying whenever somebody wants to screw us over.
Yeah, and we put it in milder terms, but back to our topic here today, which is
we had to negotiate our way out of that.
we
actually and we did not break up in a fight. Of course, we are strong people, and it's good for them that nothing happened. But it really it's a matter of, and that's the power of how you actually can control a situation. And let's say it this way. You never get it 100% right, okay? So if you learn all the tactics in negotiation, you don't get 100% right, and all the hostages or all the situations are basically going to be. So 80% is already pretty good if you can get there. In this case, we actually did get it right because we were able, through some negotiation.
Well, we allowed them to bring a different buyer. And we actually upsold the buyer on the terms and conditions so that we wouldn't. And we let them out. Kind of we negotiated. But it was also a tense business negotiation. And I have a lot more stories. If I think about this, I have a flood of this kind of stuff coming to my head, where I've been in very tense situations in having to negotiate and keep and not break a sweat. And so whatever we can learn about that. So let's talk about some practical tactics here, because now we've shared some stories, but I think let's go through some stuff. And I can kick it off, or you, Philip.
A few things that I kind of learned from Rich Voss that I kind of really kind of go back to over and over again. Number one is really don't look at it. You don't want to escalate the situation. So he talks about the kind of the calm DJ, late night DJ voice. That when you get into a situation where there's tension, you slow down a little and you talk a little deeper. He does it in a much nicer New York accent.
So I never do that. I'm in your face.
But basically, you can actually. There's a climate basically that you can that you can orchestrate. And in any negotiation, there normally is there is something that has not been said. You don't have all the knowledge from the other side. Actually, it's funny, so my wife and I right now we're watching the Netflix series SWAT. Okay,
that's very romantic.
Very romantic. I won so we were allowed to watch an action series. So we are watching SWAT and basically the American SWAT team solving all kinds of things. But they are always in the negotiation room, and they are always making the same mistakes, because I've read Rich Voss.
Chris Voss is his name.
Chris Voss. His first name. You can remember that name. Chris Voss, a book where they sometimes are trying to get something out of a person, but they are not using the right kind of frames and the right techniques to actually do that. And one of the things that is the word to just mirror the last three words. So if somebody says something and you just mirror the last three words, immediately the other person will start to actually talk more about that. And so in hostage negotiation, you want the other person, you want as much information as you can get so that you can actually understand where people are coming from. And so a great tool is actually to just kind of repeat the last three words. You mirror them. And it feels very awkward in the beginning. So try it with your spouse and with your kids. It's very, but they will never pick up on it. Even if you know it, even if I would do it now in this conversation, you would not pick up on it. Even after we just talked about this, and you immediately will
build rapport. You build rapport with the other person now.
Rapport.
Rapport, yeah.
Yes, and then basically you mirror back, and the other person kind of you do it in a curious tone, and you basically have them explore and give more context to the negotiation that you need.
That's good. Well, one of the things that I would kind of say is that one of the tools I use every day, and as I'm in discussion on something, for me is the concept of framing, which means every conversation, every negotiation around a topic needs a frame. Just like a painting that you hang, you don't just hang the painting, you put it in a frame. Why do we put paintings in a frame? Because otherwise they feel lost. Now, a lot of talk on the phone or in conversation feels a little bit lost. We don't know where this is going. And because we don't know where it's going, it's dangerous because it can go somewhere off a rail. So one of the most important ways to have a good negotiation is if you, ideally at the beginning, as early as possible, set the frame. This is what we're talking about today. This is why we're here. This is why we're here. And perhaps even you stating clearly, this is what I want from this from this negotiation, from this conversation. Okay, so that it's, in a sense, it has its guardrails, and you don't get lost somewhere in some minor little detail, because here's the matter of fact: a lot of negotiation is emotional. And this is kind of a little bit shock to us business people, because we think it's numbers, we think it's facts, we think it's figures, but a lot of things, even big deals, come down to emotional decisions that people make along the way. And obviously what comes to my mind, I've signed hundreds of contracts in front of notaries, where basically there's the notary, there's a buyer, there's a seller, we sit down and there's a business to be bought, or there's a real estate to be bought, and there's always some negotiation about some point that the notary is reading. In Germany they need to read out the whole document, and then then there are always some points that need to be discussed. I've had people scream in these meetings. I've had people leave the meetings. I've had people being threatened. I've had my notary being threatened. I had me being threatened. I've had my family being threatened. I mean,
who threatened me?
No, because it can get very heated. Now, the earlier and the clearer you can. So for back to the hostage negotiation. If I was gonna get on a phone, kinds of the people on the bank, it's
hey,
like,
Chris.
Yes, here's how I do is to say, listen, what I want together, I want to solve this situation where there's no harm done to the hostages, and that's why I want to understand what it is that you need in order for us to resolve this. Yeah. Okay, that gives a very little, simple, clear framing.
But that's collaboration. That is like, and that's another kind of a tactic. You are not. It's not about I win and you lose. But it's about, okay, how can we actually work something out? That's why the whole idea of never split the difference, because it's really about we need to both need to have a great deal. I mean, that's kind of what the idea of capitalism is built on, that I have something that I want to sell you this glass, and you give me money for this glass, and you are more happy afterwards because of the glass, and I'm more happy because of the money I got. It's not a win-lose, and I have to be honest. I have negotiated, because I can negotiate and
you're pretty tough.
Got all the things on my list taken care of, and we're all done. And then I realized,
You've
this
lost the person.
I have a deal now, but I don't have a friend, and it will just be a matter of months until this is not gonna. They will realize he kind of screwed me over, and you never want that if you are in the long game. So you want to make sure that they really it is. But one other thing is, as you are saying, framing is like I'm thinking of anchoring. So certain things, when you can anchor them, and kind of things like, hey, I know you, that you are just the man of your word. I know that, and then people go like, yes, yeah, that's who I am. And then later you can back to so you said this, and because you're a man of your word, I mean, I'm sure that this is settled. And yes, this is settled because you have anchored a certain truth or a certain kind of a behavior to people.
Yeah, let me say one of the techniques that I got to witness very early on is when I had my first catering business, And it's so funny when you kind of share stories, you always go back to your beginnings. You know, obviously we've collected for the last 25, 30 years, we've collected stories, but you kind of think of how did you get, how did you start off, Yeah. And so one of the things was I had a business partner back then. So we started the catering business, and he actually came out of the profession. He was a manager for many years and in the food industry, and we had a joint venture. We had a 50-50 deal. And then we had a problem with one of our employees. It was a woman. She was working in the kitchen. Okay, and here's the problem, which sounds a little bit ridiculous, but just her physical appearance on the way she not just dressed, but also how she took care of her clothing, she just looked like a mess, which in a kitchen environment is not appropriate. Specifically when you're also...
It was an open kitchen.
It was an open kitchen.
People,
you're presenting food also to customers. And if you looked at her, she had the spaghetti sauce and the deep fat fried steak thing stuff all over. She just looked. And so there was an issue. I mean, this was she was a good cook, but she looked like a mess, and she was in front of customers. But this is why it comes back to me, is so my business partner, Christian, was his name. I went into the conversation with him, and I thought, man, this is gonna go down bad, because how in the world do you tell a woman that she doesn't look good? I mean, this is not the most pleasant conversation to have. How do you? And here is what he did, and I remember that, and I still laugh about this. And I've shared the story with my wife, and we laugh about this on a regular basis, just between the two of us. But he basically, he kind of addressed the picture, and he gave an image, and he said, when I see you here in the kitchen, you're such a warrior, you're so into it. You actually remind me of the soldiers in the Vietnam War, when they kind of, have to go into the tunnels and they have to fight the Vietnamese, and, they come out, and once they come out of the tunnel, they have all the mud and all the stuff on it, and they look like they've been fighting a war. And this is what I see.
and she is all of a sudden.
She felt.
Taller.
No, in a sense, he valued her. By being a fighter, kind of making sure that we win. Our business is winning. But he basically compared her outside appearance to a Vietnam fighter, who's kind of coming out of the...
And you would have compared it to a homeless person.
Here's what happened. We all laughed. She laughed loud. I still see her laughing. And so he used the technique of humor to address something that was actually a very embarrassing situation. So I think, specifically when things get tense, okay, normally my voice doesn't go down, because you said, no, you can calm the room. My technique is actually humor. Mm-hmm. I say something that everyone just has to laugh, because there's something chemically, the biology people can explain it. I can't, but it releases some chemicals in your brain and in your body, and all of a sudden, we've laughed, and now we can kind of get back to the topic. So that's a good way to ease the tension.
Well, another one, and then we're almost up here, is to actually kind of when you have some difficult news you need to kind of get across. There is also, you're not just anchoring somebody else, you're actually labeling yourself. So I had a few weeks ago, I knew that I had to say something to an employee that is kind of really not great news for them, and some things need to be changed. and it would mean that they have to change the way they set up their whole day, blah, blah, blah. So the way I started is like, hey, I need to tell you something, and you will just absolutely hate me for saying this. And you pause. And then you say it, and then it's not as bad. It's like, oh, this is going to be, this is going to ruin your whole month, what I'm going to be saying. People are all of a sudden, you have another Chris Voss a technique. Basically, you're basically saying, you're warning them, you're preparing them, so to speak. And then all of a sudden what you have to say is not as bad anymore. Well, there are a whole list of things.
I just want to say one thing that I think is also worth studying, which is the whole topic of body language. Something we no one learned this in university, but you learn this in business. That actually because I talked about physical appearance, but also body language in conversation is something to pay attention to. How is someone moving? How is someone keeping straight the eye, and looking someone in the eye and not kind of just, budging down? How can you stay in the picture? Nowadays we do a lot of negotiation, obviously over the distance. And so one of the things, for me that is very important is whenever something needs to be negotiated, the phone is not a good way for me to do negotiations. I almost insist. I set up Zoom calls, and I make sure that in the Zoom call also, there is, we can see each other. Now, obviously, it's much better if we get together in a room. And the old rule is the more tense the situation or the negotiation, the more sensitively you need to move into in-person direct communication to address the issue. So don't send emails, don't send texts. I mean, that's not our topic here. But what I want to say is body language is that, like, even on a Zoom call, I'm sometimes surprised people have their camera. Their camera is off. They look down. It's just, how do you address someone in conversation? Does it come across open, ready, here, I'm present, let's talk this through? Or is this more timid? Is this more like, kind of hiding away or being distracted? Are you checking your emails or, looking at other things while you're doing it? Or are you showing through your physical bodily presence, I'm here, let's discuss this, let's talk this through, and let's find a good resolution?
Well, last thing you mentioned about communication, and I'm still so blown away how people get this wrong all the time. When it is a tough negotiation, when there is a problem, you need to have the conversation, or you need to have context. So just yesterday, I had a person who wrote me, and in 24 hours, he wrote me 5 emails. Each one kind of 2 lines, getting more angry. So a day later, I actually sent him an audio message, because I never reply to mean emails with an email. It's always, if I want to resolve it, if I don't need a reply, I don't reply. But if I want to give just the voice, the tonality in my voice. I could have said the same thing in email. It would have not have the effect. I said it on video or on an audio message, and all of a sudden the reply was, "Thank you so much for your kindness and for your understanding," and I got everything I wanted, but I said it in a different tone. Okay, I hope this was just the introduction, because
there's a lot more to be said on this
There's so
topic.
many great tactics, and it's about learning them. It's really also fun to actually try these things out with your family, and with your brother, and that's one big piece of Get Your House in Order. So thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't gotten the book Get Your House in Order, you can get it at medicibook.com, and we'll hear or see you in the next episode.